The fighter of the year for every UFC weight class. We're going to start with flyweight and make our way all the way up to heavyweight, which is going to surprise you because nobody's going to be picking the guy I'm picking for the heavyweight division. So stay to the end of the video. I'm going to look at the fighter of the year for every weight class. Obviously, the fighter of the year, regardless of weight class, is kind of going on a little bit of a debate across Instagram and Twitter and things like that. Some people are like, oh, it's Alex Pereira knocking out three men. Former champ Yuri Prochazka, former champ Jamal Hill, and then, of course, the win over Khalil Roundtree, a come-from-behind victory after he lost round one, round two. A lot of people are saying, oh, it's got to be Alex. He's got 3 wins, 3 knockouts. He's stepping in, saving cards. Then on the other hand, we got people saying, no. It's Ilia Topuria. He might have gotten 1 less win than Alex Pereira. He might have gotten 1 less knockout than Alex Pereira, but the man knocked out Max Holloway, one of the greatest featherweights of all time, beat Jose Aldo twice, or Alexander Volkanovski again, one of the best and greatest featherweights of all time, also beats Jose Aldo, beat Max Holloway 3 times. These are the cream of the crop of the featherweight division, and Ilia knocked both of them out pretty easily earlier on in those fights. Not even in championship rounds, he finished them early on in both of those matchups. So that's where the debate lies for the best fighter of the year, the fighter of the entire UFC. I will share with you who I'm predicting and who I do say is the fighter of the year regardless of weight class. But for every single weight class, we got to go look at who's the fighter of the year for them, because, again, everyone's saying Ilia or Alex Pereira and not really acknowledging a lot of the other big named fighter of the years from other weight classes. So we're going to start with the UFC's flyweight division, make our way up to heavyweight. So for the UFC flyweight division, Charles Johnson. Ladies and gentlemen, Charles Johnson is a freaking dog. All right, he joined the UFC, and his first fight was Muhammad Mokaev. A lot of people are like, oh, he's not even in the UFC anymore. Mokaev's undefeated. He's like 7-0 in the UFC. That was Charles Johnson's UFC debut, in which he ended up losing by unanimous decision. I believe he won a round on a scorecard as well in that fight. Very unfavorable matchup for Charles to just get right out of the gate. Then he won a few matchups. Then he lost a few matchups. He was actually 2-4 entering 2024. Everybody kind of had written off Charles Johnson. He was on a 3-fight losing streak inside of the UFC. Everyone thought, oh, in 2024, he loses one more, he's going to get cut. That was kind of the prevailing feeling for Charles Johnson fans. They're like, if he loses one more, he's not going to be in the UFC anymore. And then, ladies and gentlemen, starts 2024 in February. Fights Azat Maksum. He had just got off of a fight with another undefeated guy, Rafael Esteban. He has the fight with Muhammad Mokaev. Then he takes on another undefeated guy to start out 2024 in Azat Maksum, a big prospect from Kazakhstan, who is 15-0 when they fought. 15-0. Nobody was saying yes to fight Azat Maksum. Charles Johnson said, I'll fight him. I want to stay active. I want to fight. They give him that fight in February, and he easily wins that fight, standing the outside and outstriking the undefeated 15-0 prospect and beats him by unanimous decision. That's his first one in 2024. Then he fights Jake Hadley. I believe it was a short notice fight. If not, doesn't really matter. February, March, April, May. It was only 3 months later. 3 months later, he fights Jake Hadley in Jake Hadley's home area, and he dominates that fight. He gets taken down a few times, gets back up, and easily outstrikes Jake Hadley, dominating him on the feet to a unanimous decision. And the one thing I'm not really talking about just yet is he was the underdog in both of those 2 matchups I just mentioned. Beat Azat Maksum as, I believe, a 2-1, 3-1 underdog. Beat Jake Hadley as a slight underdog as well. So he's coming back and really easily outstriking these guys as a pretty good underdog in these matchups. So that's 2 fights in the span of 3 months to start the 2024 season, if you must. Then he fights Joshua Van. Now, when I say not a lot of people thought he was going to go out there and win, he was a 2.5-1 underdog against Joshua Van. Everybody's hyped about this undefeated in the UFC, young, hungry prospect, small and powerful, amazing striking, amazing boxing. Everybody was hyped on Josh Van. I and some other people that were kind of under the radar were picking Charles Johnson to go out there and win. He was heavily the underdog in this matchup against Josh Van, but he goes out there, has really close round 1, round 2. A lot of people thought it was 1-1. Some people thought Charles Johnson was down 2-0 heading into the round 3. Again, he's the underdog again. 3 fights in a row he's the underdog. And he catches Josh Van right at the beginning of the round, rocks him, hurts him again, and then hits him with a nasty uppercut and knocks out Josh Van. It finishes him in round 3. 3 underdog wins in a row, and that fight was in July. The fight he had before that was in May against Jake Hadley. May, June, July. 2 months later, so he fights 3 months later, then 2 months later and beats Josh Van. What does he do after that? That matchup was in July, August, September, October. Another, just 3 months later, goes out and beats a former ranked UFC flyweight in Sumo Darji again by unanimous decision. Now, he was the favorite going into that one. That's the only one he was actually favored to win. But 3 underdog wins, a knockout win over a crazy good prospect, and then beats a former ranked guy. That wasn't it. That wasn't it. Those are the only fights he had, but I want to kind of bring this to your attention as well. He wanted to fight again. Charles Johnson wanted to fight again in December on the UFC Tampa card, and nobody really thought much of it. But I'm like, over here, like, he just won 4 times in like 8 months, 9 months even, from February to October. February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October. 8 months. He wins 4 times, averaging a fight every 2 months. And he wants to fight again in December. 2 months later on the UFC Tampa card. Unfortunately, he did not get a fight. Nobody said yes. Maybe the UFC didn't offer him any fights. But he wanted to get a 5th fight in 2024 against anyone. Against anyone. He just wanted to fight. Wanted to stay active. He didn't get that fight, but that just shows you he is clearly the fighter of the year for the flyweight division. You might be like, oh, Pantoja, 2-0. Split decision with Urseg. And then beat an unranked guy, now ranked 14th in Kaya Sakura. 2 wins, that's it. Wasn't really active. Charles was an underdog multiple times. Got a knockout win and won 4 times. The most active fighter on the roster, basically. 4 fights in 8 months is crazy. Clearly, my man Charles Johnson is going to be the flyweight of the year. Then we go on to Merab. Now. I was debating with myself for the Bantamweight division. It was between a few guys. I had, some of these are going to be a little bit of a curveball for some of y'all. I had Merab. Of course, he's my fighter of the year for the Bantamweight division. I had Petr Yan. He had a great 2024 after going on a crazy losing streak. 3 losses in a row, then comes back with 2 wins. I had Merab. I had Petr Yan. I had who's he fighting? Peyton Talbot as my 3rd guy for going undefeated with 2 knockouts. And then I had Vinicius Oliveira. 2 guys that kind of shot onto the scene of the Bantamweight division in Peyton Talbot and Vinicius Oliveira. Vinicius, his debut, flying knee victory, and then he beat Ricky Simon in his 2nd UFC fight. Peyton Talbot goes out and dominates and styles on Cameron Simon. Then he goes out and beats Giannis Gamori in easy fashion, knocks him out in like 20 seconds. I had Petr Yan for beating Song Yadong, then dominating Davis and Figueiredo. And it was between those 4 guys. And I went towards Merab just because the names, man. Henry Cejudo, former double champion, and then, of course, becomes champion and beats Sugar Sean O'Malley. If Peyton Talbot or Vinicius Oliveira had gotten a 3rd win and another finish, I might have picked them. If Petr Yan had a 3rd fight, and maybe he had beaten, I don't know, maybe he fought Song Yadong earlier on in the year, had a fight in the middle of the year against a Corey Sandhagen, won that one, and then he beat Chito Vera, and maybe one of those was the finish, probably would have gotten Petr Yan. But I have to choose Merab for the names that he beat. Henry Cejudo, former double champion, and took him down a few times. Then he beat Sugar Sean O'Malley fairly easily when O'Malley was on a crazy win streak, beating Yan, beating Aljamain Sterling, beating Marlon Vera and all these guys. had to go Merab Dvalishvili. It was one where I was between those four, the two prospects and the two ranked fighters. Had to go Merab for the Bantamweight division. Featherweight, come on, guys. I mean, it's the debate on, is Ilya the fighter of the year, regardless of weight class. So, of course, he's going to be my clear pick for fighter of the year just for the featherweight division. It's very, very obvious. Only other contender would be Diego Lopez, who I'm going to check right now. I think he only had 2 wins this year, if we're being honest. I don't think he had, obviously, some short notice matchups, some switcheroos and things like that. Beat Dan Ige and beat Brian Ortega. And yes, he had one more against Sodiq Yusuff. But Sodiq was the only finish. The Dan Ige fight, while impressive, while short notice, 3 multiple switch-ups and opponents and craziness that went on that day. He didn't finish Dan Ige, and he lost round 3. He was gassing out a little bit. Brian Ortega wasn't able to finish him either. So 2 decisions and then a knockout over Sodiq Yusuff. I couldn't go with him. So that was the only other guy I was like, maybe Diego Lopez could be fight of the year in 2024, but I decided against it, okay? I went with Ilia Topuria very clearly because, again, like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, Max Holloway and Alexander Volkanovski just might be the best win and then another win in a row ever. I mean, you go look at Conor McGregor beating Eddie Alvarez and then beating Nate Diaz before that. You could look at Jones beating Cormier and some other guy. I bet you could look through history and find a lot of other examples, but I don't think anything tops Max Holloway and Alexander Volkanovski back-to-back, and that would be enough for me. I'd be like, oh my God, those are amazing back-to-back wins, even if they were decisions. Even if they were split decision wins, beating Volk and Holloway back-to-back, they weren't. They were both knockouts. And not really, really fluke knockouts. He was easily outstriking Max Holloway. I mean, I think Holloway won 1 round. Ilya won rounds. He was keeping it even, and he was outstriking Holloway. Then he caught him. He hurt him a little bit. Landed some leg kicks even in that fight. Then he knocked out Holloway, a guy that's never been knocked out. Alexander Volkanovski, he was losing a little bit of that fight. Lost some rounds here and there to Volk. Then he caught him on the back foot. It's not like he's ever in danger in any of these fights. Max or Volk didn't have him in any danger, and he easily went out there and dominated. 2 knockout wins over GOATs of the featherweight division. I think it's very clear why Ilya is going to be fighter of the year for featherweight. I mean, not really much of a debate. I mean, Diego Lopez is number 2. 2 decisions and a finish over Sodiq Yusuff. Doesn't really pique my interest. To beat Ilya. Then we got Renato Moicano, and I was kind of thinking of who else could be in contention, but I thought it was honestly really, really clear to pick Renato Moicano as the fighter of the year for the lightweight division. Now, he's been on a tear as an underdog recently. Beat Benoit Saint-Denis as an underdog in Paris, France. That's a big, big thing for me. Is he was about a 3-1 underdog in his opponent's home area. He went over there and fought him in a main event in a fight he's supposed to lose, and he dominates. He dominates Benoit Saint-Denis. When Benoit in round 1 dominated Dustin Poirier, Moicano dominated Benoit in round 1. I know it's MMA math, but imagine what Moicano could have done to Dustin Poirier. Just saying. It's MMA math. I know. But he had that win, dominated Benoit as a 3-1 underdog in Benoit's home area. He beat Jalen Turner, again, as a big underdog, 3-1 about in that fight. Obviously, he was about to lose round 1. He was about to get knocked out in round 1. Comeback ability comes back in, and he finishes Jalen Turner, has the post-fight speech and all of that. 2 wins in a row over guys that were heavily favored to beat him. Heavily favored to beat him. And before that, a lot of people think this one happened in 2023, but he beat Drew Dober also this year. Not a lot of people remember that one, but an easy cruising victory, taking down Drew Dober. Not a very exciting fight, but took him down, kind of dominated him on the ground. He was the favorite there, but 2 underdog wins, heavy underdog wins, and then a dominant Drew Dober win. Clear fight of the year, fighter of the year for the lightweight division. Gonna be Renato Moicano for sure. I couldn't think of anybody else. Islam had 1 win. Arman Tsarukyan had 1 win. I can't pick these guys. They had 1 win. Moicano had 3, and he was the underdog in 2. And he finished 2 that he was the underdog in, which is crazy. But yeah, Moicano, clear clear as day, underdog of the year. Maybe even underdog of the year. But definitely fighter of the year for lightweight. Then we got Joaquin Buckley. Now, Buckley had an amazing year. 4 wins, I think 3 finishes over ranked fighters. Vicente Luque, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. I mean, a TKO, a straight-up knockout, and then a TKO doctor stoppage over Colby. Then the win over Nursultan Ruziboyev. I love saying that name. 4 wins, 3 wins over ranked guys. Big names. Luque, Wonderboy, and Colby are all 3 big names. Luque was former top 10. Wonderboy, former title challenger. Colby, former champion, if you count interim, and multiple-time title challenger as well. So for Buckley to go out and do that all in the span of a year is honestly really impressive. His first win was against Vicente Luque. That's what got him into the rankings in the welterweight division. And ladies and gentlemen, it was short notice. He wasn't supposed to fight. It was in March. Vicente Luque was supposed to fight Sean Brady. Brady pulled out due to, I don't know, just says he's unable to compete. Buckley steps in and dominates that fight. Goes out there, and I believe, what was it, a TKO to ground and pound in round number 2. It was a little bit weird because Luque was coming off the little brain aneurysm thingy, but I digress. That was in March 30th. A month and a half later, he's really asking the UFC, asking the fans, and really working overtime so we can fight in Atlantic City. You don't have to do this. He's not calling for a ranked fight or anything. He's calling for anybody, anywhere, anytime. Not really anywhere. He just wants it at Atlantic City. He wants to fight in Atlantic City as the main event, as the co-main event, whatever. He's calling the UFC, calling the fans. Nobody wants to fight him. The UFC even are like, we don't really care. We don't want you on the card. Buckley keeps on with it. Goes to the UFC 300 press conferences. Calls Dana. He's like, Dana, I want on Atlantic City. Finally gets on. And he's not even fighting like a big name or anything. He just wants to fight on that card and represent him and his fans and his coach and his team and everything. Fights Nursultan Ruziboyev, a guy that was 2-0 in the middleweight division over good names and Bruno Ferreira and Cedricas Dumas. And Buckley goes out there and dominates Nursultan Ruziboyev, who Nursultan was actually a pretty big name at the time. Pretty hyped guy. Very tall, very lengthy. A big dude for the welterweight division that coming down from middleweight. Buckley goes out there, dominates him, out-wrestles the guy that everyone was thinking is the wrestler, and dominates to a unanimous decision. And that, again, that was on a month and a half later after the Vicente Luque fight. Then he beats Nursultan Ruziboyev in May, June, July, August. June, July, August, September, October. So he's got a pretty big break there. 5 months later, he's got 2 wins in the span of like 2 months. And then he takes a little bit of a break. He's like, okay, I had two wins, 2 fights, really close to each other. I need a break. Takes 5 months off and fights Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, a man that has only been knocked out once in his career, and it was a fluke one. He does the same thing. It's 1-1 going into round number 3. Round 3, somebody's got to win the round, and they're going to win the fight. Well, Buckley doesn't just go out there and win the round. He goes out there and knocks out Wonderboy Thompson, gets his back to the cage, cuts him off perfectly, boom, right hook right to the chin, and puts Wonderboy down and out cold. That was in October. It's already 2 finishes over big name guys, title challenger, and a former top 10 welterweight. And a win over Nursultan Ruziboyev. It's October, November, December. 2 months later, he gets a short notice opportunity. Nobody, I mean, there's crazy things going on behind the scenes for Tampa's main event. I mean, Colby was offered to fight Ian Gary. Multiple other fights were offered to be in that main event. Moicano versus Beneil Dariush was about to be the main event at one point. They put it for 311. Craziness happening to try to figure out a main event for UFC Tampa. Buckley gets called like a month before, and they're like, you want to fight Ian Gary? He's like, hell yeah, I want to fight Ian Gary. Again, 2 months later after his last win over Wonderboy Thompson. He says yes, scheduled to fight Ian Gary in the main event, and then it gets switched again. 2 weeks before the fight happens, he gets a switcheroo, fights a higher-ranked guy, a former interim champion, a 3-time title contender, Usman, and then Leon Edwards, I believe. And he goes out there and dominates. I don't think he loses a round. He wins round 1, round 2 dominantly. I think he 10-8'd Colby at one point. Then he cuts his eye open badly, easily wins these rounds, One round was close. I think he won every round. And he finishes Colby in round 3 by doctor stoppage. Amazing, amazing year. Nobody else in the welterweight division had this good of a year. And I honestly, I think I would have him third on the list for fighter of the year. I'd have Ilya and Alex Pereira 1 and 2 in that area. Then I'd have Buckley at number 3 for how amazing of a year he had. But clear welterweight of the year for Buckley there. Middleweight, I was really, really struggling with this one. Okay, really, really struggling. I'm gonna kind of pull up right now my number 2 pick, Nassourdine Imavov. Okay, I'm gonna pull up his Tapology because he was my number 2 pick. I was in between Imavov or Dricus du Plessis. Now, Imavov started 2024 with a win over Roman Dolidze in a main event. Okay, main event win over Roman Dolidze, majority decision. It was a clear, dominant victory, outstriking Roman on the feet, defending a lot of his takedowns. All right, great way to start the year. Then he knocks out Jared Cannonier. He was top 5 at the time. Goes out, knocks him out in round 4 after a close back and forth fight. It would have been 2-2 if he didn't get the finish in round 4. It would have been 2-2 going into round 5. Probably would have won that one and won the fight anyway, but he knocks out Jared Cannonier. Amazing win. Adesanya couldn't even knock out Jared Cannonier. He does it. Then, Nassourdine Imavov beats Brendan Allen, June, July, August, September, 3 months later on, what was the card? I'm forgetting where this event was being held against Brendan Allen, but Brendan Allen was on how many wins in a row? 29 years old on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 wins in a row, and Imavov easily stifles that and clearly wins the fight. Unanimous decision. Now that's 3 wins in a row, top 10 opponent, top 5 opponent, and then a top 10 opponent again. 3 top 10s and one of them being a top 5 opponent in a row. Had an amazing year. Went from ranked 13th to number 4 in the middleweight division. Hugely. I don't know what I'm trying to say right now. My grammar's kind of off, but he bumped up massively in the middleweight division ranking. So I was definitely considering having Nassourdine as my middleweight of the year. I went Dricus just because he beat former champion Sean Strickland. Then he finished Adesanya. If he had gotten a decision over Adesanya, and it was like a split decision, another close one, I probably would have picked Imavov. The fact that he finished and submitted a guy that's never been submitted, beat Sean Strickland as well in the same year, I had to pick Dricus. He wasn't champion to start this year. He became champion and defended against one of the best middleweights of all time in Adesanya. That's who I got for that one. And then we have Alex Pereira, who, again, like Ilya Topuria, a lot of people are debating. He is the fighter of the year, regardless of weight class. And that's the debate I'm going to end this video on, is who is the actual fighter of the year. But he had an amazing, amazing year. It's clear. I mean, light heavyweight, there's no debate. There's nobody else even close. I don't even know who'd be number 2 at this point, because nobody else had even close to this good of a year as Alex Pereira had. Starting in April, I believe on UFC 300, saves UFC 300, knocks out Jamal Hill in a round. Then he fights Yuri Prochazka, again, saving UFC 303. Not long later, April, May, June, 2 months later, saving the card because McGregor and Chandler got canceled, saves it, and beats Yuri Prochazka by knockout. Then, UFC 308, supposed to be another fight. All sorts of stuff getting mixed around because Islam and Arman Tsarukyan, they can't fight. They can't do that fight for what was it, the UFC Abu Dhabi card, so the original UFC 307 has to move to Abu Dhabi. Everything's getting switched around. They don't have a fight in the main event for UFC 307 anymore. June, July, August, September, October. 4 months later, they call Alex Pereira after 2 amazing wins in a really short amount of time, and they call him again. And he's like, "You want me to fight again?" "Oh, yeah, want you to fight again." He goes out there, fights Khalil Roundtree in the closest of these 3 fights of the year, and again, saves UFC 307 in a sense, and loses round 1, loses round 2, has a little bit of a comeback, and beats Khalil Roundtree in the later rounds, knocks him out in round 4 with uppercuts. Whew, what an amazing year from Alex Pereira. I mean, literally saved 3 cards in the span of 6 months. 6 months, 3 fights, save 3 cards. That is an amazing, amazing year. Again, not against huge names. Yuri, I don't think had any title defenses. Jamal Hill didn't have any title defenses. They are former champions, but still. Khalil Roundtree was a relatively unknown guy, ranked like 8th or 9th in the UFC light heavyweight division. Again, these aren't the biggest wins in the UFC. These aren't the best wins ever, but they're wins nonetheless. They're on short notice, a lot of them, and they're knockouts, they're finishes. They're good wins. They're good wins. So, light heavyweight of the year, clear. But is he the fighter of the year between Ilya and himself? Again, we'll get to that later. And last but not least, again, I told you at the beginning. I told you at the beginning it's going to be a surprise. It's going to be a shocker. It's going to be a shocker. Now, I don't know if it is, but if it is not, I want you to look me in the eyes and tell me you are not shocked with my pick for heavyweight fighter of the year. It's PFL's Denis Goltsov. Started his year in April, ended his year in November. April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November. That's 7 months, and he had 4 wins. 7 months and 4 wins over Linton Vassell. Knocked him out, ground and pound TKO round 3. Thiago Santos, former UFC title challenger, knocked him out in round 1 with ground and pound. Round 1, 2 minutes. Then he beat Tim Johnson, former Bellator champion, I believe, in round 1 again in like 2 minutes. Then he beats Oleg Popov, 19-1. Hasn't lost in like 8 years, and he triangle chokes him in round 1. 3 round 1 finishes in a row and a 3rd round knockout win. All 4 of those guys I just mentioned that he beat are lower level UFC heavyweight guys. They're not going to be champions or title contenders or anything, but they could be ranked. Oleg Popov, Linton Vassell, Tim Johnson, Thiago Santos. These are all guys that could be ranked fighters in the UFC, lower ranked guys, but he finishes and dominates all of them this year in 2024. And I look through the heavyweight division in the UFC. I looked at every single heavyweight on the roster. Not a single heavyweight went 3-0, 4-0, 5-0. The best a heavyweight has done this year was 2-0. 2-0. That's the best a heavyweight has done in 2024 in the UFC. 2-0. And there's a few of them. Not a lot. There's a few that went 2-0 this year. But they're 2 wins. One of them's a decision. One of them's a knockout. Okay? If you're getting a decision in the heavyweight division and you're only fighting twice, you're not my fighter of the year. You got to be more active than that. Like Charles Johnson, like Buckley. Like a lot of the guys I've been mentioning. They're active. They're winning consistently and fighting often and finishing. Buckley finished 3 times against ranked guys. Heavyweight UFC was horrible this year. I'll be straight up with you. Aspinall only had 1 fight because, again, he's trying to fight Jones, and Jones won't fight. Jones had 1 fight. Volkov had 2. He would have been my fighter of the year if they had not robbed him. He would have had 2 wins over, what was the win before Cyril Gane? Sergey Pavlovich. Pavlovich and Gane back-to-back? I would have had Volkov as my fighter of the year, even if they were both decisions. But they robbed him, so I have to go to PFL. But yeah, these are my fighters of the year. Heavyweight, Denis Goltsov. Light heavyweight, Alex Pereira. Middleweight, Dricus du Plessis. Joaquin Buckley for the welterweight division. Renato Moicano for the lightweight. Ilya Topuria for featherweight. Merab for the bantamweights. Charles Johnson for the flyweights. And that is 1, 2, 3, 4 fighters that are not UFC champion and 4 fighters that are UFC champions. So UFC champions definitely are going to be higher on there to be fighter of the year, but some of them, like Islam, only fought once. Pantoja had 2 fights. Good, but not enough to make me go above Charles Johnson. Bilal, I mean, he beat Leon Edwards, but again, decision. Can't really have you there. Who's another one? What do we do for middleweight? Dricus, Alex Pereira. Heavyweight, I mean, John Jones. 1 win over Stipe is not going to make you fighter of the year for the heavyweight division. So that's what I got. And we're going to end it with who is the fighter of the year between Ilya and Alex Pereira. I want to do a little drum roll, please, for who is the fighter of the year. Drum roll. It's Ilia Topuria. It's no debate. It's no debate. No debate at all. Alex Pereira had 3 wins. He had 3 wins, 3 knockouts, 3 good, solid knockout wins. Cool. Jamal Hill has no legacy. He's got no title defenses. Yuri Prochazka has no legacy. I think he had 1 title defense, maybe. I could be wrong. I don't think he has a title defense either. And then Khalil Roundtree's a ranked 8th guy. I don't think that's going to help you too much. It'll help a little bit. But just the fact, if Ilia had done the same thing and had those 2 knockout wins over Arnold Allen and Diego Lopez, I would go Alex Pereira. I'd go Alex Pereira. Same situation. He beats Diego Lopez and Arnold Allen the exact same way as he did Max and Volk. I go Alex Pereira as the fighter of the year. The fact that he did it to Volkanovski and Max Holloway in the same year, Max, a guy that's never been knocked and never been dropped, Justin Gaethje, I digress, clearly puts him as fighter of the year for me. If Alex Pereira had, knocked out John Jones this year, and knocked out Daniel Cormier this year, then I'd go him to be fighter of the year. I don't think, let's just say Alex Pereira goes out and knocks out, who's Azamat Murzakanov, and then he knocks out Yuri Prochazka, then he knocks out Khalil Roundtree, and then Ilia just knocks out Max Holloway. 1 win for the year. Might honestly still go Ilia Topuria. Might. The Max Holloway win is just so high on my fighter of the year type thing, because Holloway was about to be fighter of the year. I honestly think if Holloway had done what he did against Gaethje and he finished Ilia and he had the Gaethje win up a weight class to become BMF, and then he beat Ilia Topuria, I might actually have gone Max Holloway to be fighter of the year. Let me straight up. Those back-to-back wins up a weight class, beating Gaethje for the belt, then beating undefeated Ilia Topuria, who just beat Volkanovski by knockout, might have gotten Max Holloway to be fighter of the year. But I just think Alex Pereira's wins aren't as impressive. Again, he was losing to Khalil at one point in that fight. Beat Yuri, beat Jamal, but it's Yuri and Jamal. Ilia beat Holloway and Volkanovski. I think they're on a completely different level there. So yeah, Ilia is my number 1 fighter of the year. Alex Pereira's at number 2. Buckley is at number 3. Probably Moicano at number 4, then Charles Johnson number 5. Dricus number 6. Merab number 7. And then just because Dennis Goldstein number 8, because again, he's PFL. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Those are my fighters of the year for 2024. If you like them, if you disagree, if you agree, I don't give a schnikes. Comment down below your list, your fighter of the year for flyweight up to heavyweight, and I hope to see you again. Subscribe, like, all of that. Bitch.